let us talk about that assessment and evaluation. Okay. So, next few lecture I discuss about the assessment and evaluation, which is the integral part of effective teaching. If your assessment and evaluation is not correct, then you see the student engagement and then how the grade is correlate student skill, all will in the stake. So, what we will discuss, think about what is available, or you can say that the assessment we practices, is it correct or not. Suppose that today's semester exam, if you ask any students that how much time is required to prepare for your semester exam, they say 7 days before the semester is sufficient, which I already told in that some lectures the student engagement is not that good. So, because every students know that my final goal is to pass the exam or get a grade or marks in the exam. Okay. Now, if you see that if the exam is not correct, if your assessment, if your evaluation, while you take the exam and marks the students is not correct, then most of the things whatever you do in the lectures, it cannot increase the student engagement. Okay. So, let us think about what is assessment and what is evaluation. Okay. So, assessment, what do you mean by assessment? I have assessed. So, assessment is nothing but a method to collect the evidence whether a learner has acquired the skill or not. So, assessment is a methodology, and if I say the evaluation, when I evaluate, so the data which is gathered through the assessment, I quantify to define a grade or percentage of skill development on the learner. Okay. So, I can say assessment is a process of gathering data to measure degree of attainment of course goal. What is the course goal? Course goal are nothing but a course outcome, which I said in the beginning, that at the end of the course a learner should able to do this thing. So, I have to assess that whether a learner is able to do that things or not. So, let us think that suppose I write a course objective which is talk about programming, that at the end of the course students should able to write a MATLAB code for such and such cases. Now, you can say how do I test it in the semester exam, because I cannot give the MATLAB course writing, the MATLAB code writing there. So, I said that is why that only the semester exam is not the assessment. So, assessment may be a quiz, may be a class test, may be an assignment, may be a term project, by which I want to collect the evidence whether the learner has attained the course goal or not. So, once I collect the data, assignment technique, so it is depend on your course goal. If course goal contain any programming, I can give an assignment to the students and or learner to do this programming and submit to me. A course goal has a design which involves, let us the complex design is involved, which cannot be tested 3 hour examination. So, I can give the design to the student and told them to do it and submit it as a home assignment. So, by which I am collecting the data. So, assessment is not only the semester exam or mid semester exam or class test, maybe 30 minutes class test, it is varies. It depends on your course goal, how do you plan the assessment. Once you done the assessment, evaluation is the whatever the data I collected through assessment, I have to justify for each students the relevance of the assessment. If necessary, data normalized for different test assessment method. So, I put different weightage on the different assessment method and I justify I can quantify the course attainment of the particular learner. So, if I say my course a student got EX, that means I am justifying his learning proficiency or the skill developed on that learner is 100%, because ES carries the 10 marks. So, I can say if I have a 4-5 skill set I have to develop on the students. So, if a student has developed all skill which I mention in the course, then I can certify that okay, he can get EX. Okay. So, the scientific way or scientific method for evaluate a student is not only the semester parikha or end term exam. It may be different assessment technique, and as a teacher I should put the proper weightage for the different assessment technique and compute the competentness of the student at the end of the assessment or when I do the evaluation of the students. So, I can say evaluation is the end and assessment are the means. So, basic difference between the assessment and evaluation is that assessment is the means by which I am collecting the evidence from the learner to certify the evaluation or to can do the evaluation. So, many of us end semester paper we can see and evaluate and 80%, 70% and we give them the marks to the students. Now, what is the problem is that have we ever visited that answer script again and find out what is the drawback? Because I have already mentioned the purpose for the examination is not to provide marks only to the students. If I ask you what is the purpose for evaluation, why there is a evaluation and assessment is there in during the curriculum or during the study, or why there is a end sem exam, why there is a mid sem exam, why there is a class test, it is not to provide only the marks to the students. It is like the same. Suppose a doctor told you to examine your blood and you do the test and you not shown to the doctors and not take the feedback loop to complete or treat the disease, then what is the purpose for your test? Whole purpose is failed. So, the system, the examination system is not only provide, or doctor may say or examination result may say you have a blood sugar of 400, then you have not take the medicine. What will happen? Nothing will happen. What is the purpose for the test? Nothing. So, unless you close the loop, the whole purpose is meaningless. So, purpose for the examination is not only provide the marks to the students, purpose for the examination is to reinforce the teaching and learning. What is the reinforcement? Reinforcement is that you have to certify or you have to tell the learner and also provide the rectification methodology that you have not attained this skill, but this skill is required in your next class. Because I said the learning is learner responsibility, not the teacher responsibility, but as a mentor or guide, you should warn the students that you are not following the correct track or correct path, or you cannot reach the goal unless you do this thing. So, assessment, different kinds of assessment is to find out whether a student is following the correct path or not. Now, today's practices, if I ask you that today some students said grade X, is the grade correlate with his skill in today's examination system? Can I guarantee the grade which student get and the skill which student have are positively correlate or correlate each others? Not at all. Why? Because students said that I can get a good grade without engaging throughout the semester, only study 7 days. That means, a student can achieve the goal which is set by teachers are achievable by only 7 days study. So, that means you are not planning for whole course goal, or student know what is the questions will be asked in the examination, he prepare for that, and that is totally knowledge level, that is not skill level. He remember it in his mind, give the exam, forgot everything. Today, if you ask a 4th year students, what are the subjects you have studied, he cannot name them. Because he know that assessment is only to earn the marks. So, because 7 days I can just remember all those things and write the exam, pass it. Many of university, if you say that there is a provision, you have to answer any 5 questions out of any 8. So, a question paper given 8 questions, I have to answer any 5. And you see that all questions are related to one chapter, means somehow they are chapter related. So, a student can exclude 3 chapters, but he able to answer the 5 questions. So, roughly if I consider if the syllabus is 100% which is covered by the 8 questions, if a student can prepare for 70% of the syllabus, he can get the 100% marks. Even then, when you say that 30% is your pass mark, then see that only knowing the 21% of the syllabus, 21% of the competence skill which is required for the course, student is promoted to the next class. What will happen? If a student does not have that knowledge, how you cope up the next subject? Suppose I give you an example. Suppose a student is doing in analog electronics and he get only pass marks. So, that means he know only 20% of the skill in analog electronics, promoted to VLSI design. Are you able to cope up with the VLSI design without knowing analog electronics? So, the subject which are prerequisite are interlinked. So, if my assessment, if my grade or my assessment and evaluation system is not perfect, then what will happen? The student will get marks, but not develop skill. So, the whole purpose of this lecture is to how to design a good question paper, how to assess the student in different meaning to certify whether they acquire the skill or not. So, purpose for the assessment and evaluation system not to provide only marks to the students, it is reinforce the teaching learning. I will show you how this will come. Let us raise the issues. What issues are raised in assessment and evaluation? So, those are the issues. How can we reliably measure grade and certify outcome at different level, different domain and different levels of learning? So, I have to certify the students. If a student get EX, this grade should be reliable. Reliable means it is a positive correlation between his skill set and his grade. So, if I get EX marks in a subject A, then I should acquire the skill or outcome of the subject A fully. So, how do I do that? That reliably I have to measure whether they attain the outcome or not, and I have to grade and certify perfectly that which is correlate, grade is correlate with his skill set. Today a student may get EX in a one subject. After the exam, if you ask any questions, he forgot everything. That means skill is not developed, although his mark sheet reflect he has a EX grade on that subject. So, how do we reliably do that? Assessment. We said about assessment. When, what, how much, how. So, what kind of assessment we should design? When we should take the assessment? How much? How much assessment we do in homework? How much assessment we provide in class test? How much assessment data I will collect from their project? How much assessment data I will collect from their interaction in the class? How much or other way weightage also? How much weightage should I give to the classes, give to the class test, semester exam, assessment, homework, project, interaction? All those things are useful because all are matter to find out the outcome or skill developed by the students in that course. What are the different functions of assessment? How can we ensure their validity and reliability? Your assessment and evaluation must be valid and must be reliable. How do that? What are the kinds of interpretation we can make? How can we make good assessment plan? What are the important statistical tools? What is the current state of R&D in this field? So, I will discuss all those issues during few lectures or this week you find that assessment and evaluation. So, now I come to that my questions. So, purpose for assessment and evaluation is reinforce the teaching and learning. So, there is a feedback loop we should work which is reinforce the teaching and learning. You know there is a two kinds of assessments are there, one is called criteria based, another is called norm reference. I am discussing about the criteria based. Criteria based means the purpose for the assessment and evaluation is already mentioned. Purpose for why this assessment is, the criteria is fixed. Norm reference means purpose for the assessment or assessment to evaluate the students or rank the student 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the process is called norm reference based assessment system. So, for the course, for the designing of the course or for the purpose we are engaged here classroom teaching. So, all of the as a teachers I should test whether students has achieved the my desired course outcome or not. So, all the course outcome or course outcome objective are the criteria. So, I design an assessment plan based on the criteria. Why I say assessment plan? Because this assessment is not that only summative assessment at the end of the semester or at the mid sem. It may be consist of project, it may be consist of home assignment, it may be consist of writing a program, it may be consist of simulating, design a simulation, or it may be consist of design a model. So, all kind of assessment I have done. So, I have collected the evidence by which I can certify whether a student has reached the criteria or not. If a student has attained the expected outcome, then only I assign the grade or rank and certify his or her competence on that subject. So, maybe suppose in a one course I have a 5 course outcome. A student may reach this outcome, this outcome, this outcome, may not reach this outcome and this outcome. I may tell the students that, or I may certify the students, you have that percentage of competency because I have to evaluate you, that is why we give you the percentage, but you do not have this skill and this skill and this skill. So, that they can know I do not have these two skill, I have to acquire that skill before I going to the next class. What I am discussing, that how many of us has revisit the answer script after providing the marks? That question I ask. Why I ask? Because once you grade the answer script, let some student get 70%, then we throw the answer script in a dustbin, or we put in some almaris, some corner of the almaris. But purpose is not that. How many of us had quantify which of the outcome most of the student doesn't attain? So, that means some expected outcome may not be attained by majority of the students. So, one purpose is that I certify the students, you have this skill, this skill, this skill, but you do not have this skill, this skill, this skill. I have told the students. Another one is that I found I have claimed this is my course outcome, and most of the students are unable to reach this outcome. So, what is the cause? So, I evaluate the effectiveness of the instruction. So, the cause may be the outcome which I set may not be achievable. So, it is non-achievable outcome, or the teaching learning process and instruction which I design for attain this outcome is not correct. So, as a teacher, I should take the feedback that either this outcome is not achievable, so I can redesign the outcome, or the teaching learning process which I am using are not suitable for develop that skill. So, that is the part of the reinforcement of teaching learning. One is student side, another one is teacher side. As a student, I know I do not have this skill, this skill, this skill which is required for this course. So, I prescribe the students like that, you have a high blood sugar, you should take this medicine, this medicine, this medicine before you go to the next class. Now, whether they read or not develop, that is not the teacher responsibility, but as a teacher I specifically pointed out those are the skill you do not have, you try to acquire those skills. If they does not develop, as a teacher I cannot do anything, but except I can motivate the students, please do that. Second one is that as a teacher, if I found most of the students does not attain certain outcome, that means either the outcome is not achievable, or the teaching learning process which I follow may not be appropriate for acquire that skill. So, as a teacher I will rectify my course outcome or teaching learning process, so that from the next batch this thing does not happen. So, I am reinforcing my teaching learning process. Okay. So, ultimately how you design your assessment, that will come later on. So, the purpose for assessment and evaluation I am explained, how this assessment and evaluation reinforce the teaching and learning I am explained. So, this is the 2 point I want to keep in your mind, that assessment is the process of collecting data or evidence to quantify or to identify whether a learner achieved the course outcome or not. Now, you may say, at the end I find out the learner is not attained the course goal. How do I correct it during while the course is in running? So, suppose I want to develop a skill in one module, and I find out if I test that somebody does not have this skill of this module, at the end of the semester rectification is not possible. So, if I have a module goal which I have already discussed when you writing the course outcome based course structures. So, suppose this module is run for week number 1, module 1 run for week number 1. Now, I want to find out within this module whether the learner attain the intended outcome, module outcomes or not. So, I want a periodic feedback from the learner group, so that I can modify or I can change, or I can, you can say I can change my teaching learning or modulate teaching learning process, so that they acquire the most of the goal. On the other hand, you may say once I deliver or once I over the week number 1, I want to find out what are the possible misconceptions remain on the student's mind. So, I want to conduct a periodic assessment by which I can identify the student misconception, or I can identify why the students has difficulty to attain that goal. That process is called periodic assessment, that can be done using formative assessment. So, using formative assessment, we can identify or we can take the periodic, you can say the periodic assessment or periodically collect the data to find out whether the teaching learning process is effective or not, whether what are the misconceptions of the students. So, if I want to do that, how do I do it? So, periodic misconception identification or periodic test is called formative assessment. When I take the semester exam, it is a summative assessment. So, how do I conduct the formative assessment, so that I can diagnose what is the misconception of the student? What I am saying? I am saying I am not, initially I said that if I want to make the class is interactive, let us do not talk yourselves, let us allow the student to talk. So, you get one feedback from there. Another feedback is that some students may have certain misconception on their mind. How do I find out those misconceptions? Can I conduct a test at every week? If I do it, think about a large classroom scenario. Suppose I have a 400 students in the class, or let us 200 students in the class. What is the requirement from the formative assessment? Not only conduct the test, I can run a quiz using modules, okay, I run the quiz. But what I want, my purpose for that quiz is not to provide marks to the students. My purpose is to find out what are the misconceptions still exist at the end of the week number 1. So, not only I have to check their answer script, or if I take the quiz, not only I have to collect their correct answer, but also I have to find out by visiting why they are wrong in the assignment, or why they are wrong in the formative assessment. So, I have to find out a student has done mistake. I have to revisit the mistake and find out what is the possible misconception of the students. That is the teacher's job, not only provide the lectures. So, once I done the formative assessment, once done the quiz or module based examination, I am not taking the examination to provide the marks to the students. I am taking the examination to find out what are the possible misconceptions still exist on the student mind. But if I have a 400 student class, you may say Is it possible to go every answer script that way, find out the misconception and told the students you have this misconception, correct it this way, provide the material, all special attention to the students. Unless I able to do that, I cannot say I am teaching a large classroom, because the requirement is that I have to teach individually, I have to identify the individual need and I have to reach out the individual students in a classroom scenario. So, I want a technology, or I can use those technology which cater me to do this. What is that technology? How do you do that? That is the challenge in today's educational technology. Can I design a formative assessment technique by which I will diagnose the student misconception and provide the appropriate remedial lesson? Can I do that? So, next class I will discuss that part first. Okay? Thank you.